Hello, and welcome to Seeing Red. It is April 15th, 2024. Bernie's got several hookahs with him right now. So careful, Bernie. I don't know the laws in Missouri right now, but they're still pretty strict about that stuff in Georgia.
A memo to Bernie, do not take a bite of carrot nibbling like a rabbit before you, like literally a minute before you begin a podcast. Not a good idea.
I used to always use the carrot excuse with my parents too, Bernie. It's fine. I'm Will Leitch here, as always, with the great Bernie Miklasz. Follow us on Twitter/X at Seeing Red Pod. Emails seeingredpod@gmail.com. The St. Louis Cardinals, your listeners, St. Louis Cardinals, and I would say my and Bernie's, Bernie's journalistic covering of the St. Louis Cardinals, my occasional journalistic covering of the St. Louis Cardinals, but mostly my screaming at the St. Louis Cardinals. They are 7-9. They are 7-9 right now. I mentioned last week I was hoping they could go 500 this week. They didn't quite get there. They are in last place. Though, and it's funny because for a while you're like, well, they're in last place, but everyone in the Central, they're going to cool down. They have not cooled down at all. The fourth place team is 3 games above 500. The Cardinals are actually 2.5 out of fourth right now and 4 games out of first place. Now, there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of frustrations out there, and I feel like our job, Bernie, is to both reflect those frustrations, but also balance.
Will, I'm really sorry. I'm screwing this up, man.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
No, man. It's bad because people can hear me coughing.
That's okay. I'm ready.
I'm an idiot.
We'll put like a beat to it. We'll make up.
Okay.
But I'll keep talking, introing a little bit more, and you can
okay,
read what you need to. But listen, I am also gagging from what the Cardinals.
I think maybe that's my tribute to the Cardinals, huh? Over the weekend.
I guess this is the question, Bernie. This is the question, Bernie. Is on one hand, like, I feel like our job is to be like as rational as possible on this. And the fact is the Cardinals are 7-9, which is not great, but also, not the end of the world. There are still signs, I think, that are positive with the team. 7-9 is, like, for crying out loud, all it would have taken was 1 win of the 4 losses they had this week. And we wouldn't be freaking out. They'd be 500, and it'd be like, and we'd be talking about their tough schedule that they went through and kind of keeping their head above water. That tough schedule does seem to be shifting a little bit, and we'll see how that goes moving forward. And also, like, for example, the Astros are 6-11. They are also preaching no panic. But I would argue the difference, and this is where I'd like to get into this on this, Bernie.
Sure.
Is the difference here is the Astros have made 7-8 straight ALCSs. And therefore, I would argue they've very much earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to it's going to be fine. Don't freak out. It's just a slow start. It's not even that slow start. It's 7-9. Again, they win one of these games in the last week. They're at 500 after a pretty tough schedule so far this year.
But Houston does have an excuse because they're starting pitching, and even their bullpen to an extent has been ravaged by injuries. And
the Cardinals can try to use that excuse, like
right.
Edman's been gone, Nootbaar's just gotten back.
But I don't think the magnitude of the Astros losses is pretty steep.
Of course. Here's my thing about the Cardinals is that, like, if you're worrying, and I'm worried, they're under 500 and they're 4 games out of first already, and I feel like we just got started. I'm worried, but I find my worries tempered, perhaps incorrectly. I find my worries tempered by the idea that I'm still, perhaps wrongly, don't think that this is what the offense is going to be all year. Now, if the starting pitching was getting ravaged and the bullpen was falling apart, like, you looked at the team last year and you're like, oh, I don't know how they pull out of this when it came to the pitching. Like, once things started to collapse on itself, it was pretty obvious it was just going to keep getting worse. Looking at this offense, and there's concerns. I'm not saying there's obviously concerns. The offense has been not very good so far. I still don't think this is going to be the offense all year. Now, that doesn't mean the defense is going to be what it is all year. The starting pitching and the bullpen is going to be what's been so far. It's not like starting pitching has been great, but I think it's been adequate enough to win if the offense comes around. The defense has been good. Base running has been good. The fundamentals have been good. We've talked about that. but the hitting is not happening. I still feel like the hitting will not be like this all year. You just want to make sure that it doesn't take long enough for the hitting to come around, that you're A, already behind the 8 ball, or B, once the hitting comes around, if it comes around, the defense and the pitching is starting to spring leaks. How concerned are you, Bernie?
Maybe more than you are. By the way, I commend you seriously for your level-headed analysis, because usually I don't want to. I'm not trying to stereotype either one of us, but usually I'm the hothead, and you're the calmer guy, or sometimes,
but only externally. Internally, I'm screaming.
Yeah, and or sometimes you get a little more anxious about things than I do. But it's always that's one of the reasons I enjoy the podcast, because our personalities tend to be different. But then that's actually a good thing. But I'm really just ticked off by the way this has happened, because they beat the Marlins on that Saturday, and they're 5-4, and listen, they were catching the Phillies at a good time after that. Arizona basically had beaten no one except for Colorado early on. And the Cardinals had a chance to win 2 series in a row. I mean, okay, give them a mulligan for losing that Sunday against the Marlins. I mean, it was bad, but okay, they still won the series. So they had a chance to really get something going here, because at that point they had won 2 out of 3 series. They had they were in position to beat Philadelphia. Obviously, they lost the 3rd game. They were in position to beat Arizona. They lost the final 2 games. So now all of a sudden, they've lost 2 series in a row, and they have a losing record in their series to date. And it's just when you have a team that's trying to, bounce back from just a dreadful 2023. I must admit that when I see some flashbacks of 2023, it's pretty disturbing. And I know that's immature, because every season is different. I mean, we shouldn't hold 2023 against these players, but that said, as everyone's pointed out, including me, the Cardinals have had a chance to make their record so much better this year. They're 0-5 in the final games of a series, right? And okay, they had a chance to split with LA. It would have been 2-2, but they lost the final game, and they were in position to win that final game out there. They won the first 2 against Schilt in San Diego. Then they lost, so no sweep, although they won the series, so that's okay. They're up 2-0 over a winless Miami team, and then they got bludgeoned on Sunday. All right, still win the series. But they were in the same scenario against the Phillies and the Diamondbacks, where it was 1-1 after 2 games. And again, they flunked the final game of the series each time. I mean, that's disturbing to me, because, listen, let's just say it would have been the opposite, right? Let's just say they would have won all 5 of those final games of a series. They'd be 12-4 right now. Missed opportunities. That's what bothers me. A lot of missed opportunities to sort of feather their nest early on. You and I were totally on the same wavelength about them losing 3 out of 4 at Dodger Stadium. No big deal. We expected the Dodgers to be better. They are better. Move on. Then when they started to generate some momentum, it went away, because they lost 2 winnable series that were right there for them. Oh, yes, sir. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think that, I'll put it this way. One of the problems with the last game of the series, and listen, I know they're facing Gallen yesterday, and they got to get guys rests. But boy, that lineup, I can say I feel like the offense is going to come around. But if the lineup is going to include Brendan Crawford, Michael Ciani, and Victor Scott, sorry, not Victor Scott, Ciani and Crawford, you're already in trouble. I have to say the Crawford, Mason Wynn has not just been their best defensive player. He's been one of their best hitters. Mason Wynn feels like the guy that's got to be in the lineup every day. And this is kind of the problem with having Brandon Crawford on the roster. You can't have Brandon Crawford on the roster and not play him a couple times this week. He's Brandon Crawford. He's on the roster. You almost feel obliged to play him because he can't play a place other than shortstop, apparently. And you already have 2 second basemen anyway. And you're not going to put him at third because that's where Renato is. And so you look at that lineup, I understand you're facing Gallen, though I think Michaelis gave you, that's about what I would expect from Michaelis at this point. 5 innings, 2 runs, not quite 5 innings, 2 runs, not great, but you gave you a chance to do something in that game if you couldn't hit, if you end up not scoring any runs. But if you got Siani and Crawford in the lineup, you're already considering how much Walker is struggling, how much for all the Arenado coming around a little bit is still not doing much. Goldschmidt's not really doing much. It kind of feels that like the time to do the Sunday getaway game lineup is not now. And La Russa used to do that all the time, and I understood why La Russa did it, and I think it made a certain sense. But I think this is when we're talking about comparing the Cardinals to the Astros. The difference between the Cardinals and the Astros, A, it is the pitching injuries that the Astros had, but B, the Astros didn't just finish in last place, and something that they've not done in 20, 30 years. There is a certain sense of, I still feel, and this is a fundamental problem with the Cardinals. I would argue a fundamental problem with Cardinals fans, myself very much included. My default state is, you know what? I've been watching the Cardinals my whole life, and certainly for the last 25 years. Generally speaking, the default state is competence. The default state is they're going to get it figured out. They don't always get it figured out, but generally speaking, you don't think like when things fall apart, you can generally see them coming. I look at this team now and the way that's constructed, and it feels like not a disaster team. Maybe it's not an NL Central winning team as good as the NL Central is right now. It's apparently going to be harder than we thought it was, but I don't see the disaster in waiting that we saw pretty clearly pretty early last year. But that goes under the presumption, my own personal experience bias of, oh, well, I've seen Arenado, I've seen Goldschmidt, I know what Walker has set up in these prospect things. This offense is going to come around, and I don't know that. I don't know that, and they don't know that. And so I think when they act this way, when you have a getaway game like you did Sunday, rather than treat it as a, holy crap, we need to finish 500 for the week. We need to be able to go in 500, we need to come out of this tough early stretch where, again, the schedule gets a little easier now, and we'll see if they can take advantage of it. But at a certain level, there doesn't seem to be the urgency of a team that finished in last place for the first time in 30 years last year.
No, I was, listen, I think there's a lot of piling on concerning Ali Marmol. I really do. I think there's people, I understand he's not popular, and I understand he had a terrible season last year. I mean, I understand why people have a short fuse with him. I really do. I'm not going to criticize anybody for having a short fuse, but I do think that at times it qualifies as piling on. I can't defend him on this one. And I'm usually someone for many, many years, Tony La Russa would have these getaway day lineups or whatever. And the interesting thing was that they actually worked a lot more than we expected. This is not as you said, man, I'm going to follow up on that. This is not a getaway day lineup. You don't do that. You have a chance to win a series. You have a chance to avoid losing a series, your second straight series. And, you don't want to fall like 2 games to 500, and you don't want to be 4 games out of first place. And I'm the last guy that anybody needs to tell, well, it's a 162 game season. Yeah, I know that. I say that all the time. That's really not the point. Here's what I don't understand about this. Mason Wynn is 22 years old. All right. Now, no one expects him to be Cal Ripken Jr. All right. We don't expect him to be the Iron Man. All right. However, the Cardinals have played 16 games this season, and he has started 12 of the 16 plus, and he's appeared in 13 of the 16. But keep in mind, they also had 2 days off so far, one after that home opener against Miami, and then the one before they went to Arizona. So that means that Wynn has had 6 days off, during the first 16 games on their schedule. 6 days off. Why does a 22-year-old shortstop batting .349 and is showing no signs of like being tired? Because in his last 5 games, I think he was 7 for 17. The first 2 games of the Arizona series is 4 for 8. Does that sound like a guy that as Ali said, needs a day? Does that sound like a guy needs a day to you? Sounds like a guy that might have been able to deliver a big hit or 2 on Sunday when they needed it. Crawford struck out looking with the bases loaded, and then he popped up with a runner on third. I mean, he had 2 empty at bats when they really needed a push home run. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, he's had 6 days off in the first 16 games of their schedule, including the 2 team days off, 6 days off. But why would he be tired? He said, well, we want to keep him fresh. I get that, but you also don't want to go overboard with this. This is crazy. But to your point, this is the problem they actually signed on for. They signed on for when they brought in Brandon Crawford. I have a lot of respect, as you do, for Brandon Crawford, the career he's had. But he hit 194 last year. It's clearly his best days are behind him. By all accounts, he has been terrific in terms of providing some leadership. Even working with Wynn, he gets high marks in those areas. But sometimes, man, you need base hits and RBIs. You need someone that's going to win a game for you. And Wynn has been probably their best player so far. I don't see why you have to overdo the rest thing or use it, frankly, as an excuse. Because when Brandon Crawford was signed here, he signed on unofficially, knowing that he would play a certain amount of games. I'm sure the Cardinals didn't give him a number, but they're not going to let him just sit on the bench, sit on the bench, sit on the bench. I think part of this is, here's where it backfired. There was probably a concern, or at least a situation where they had to prepare for the fact that maybe Mason Wynn was going to get off to a terrible start. I mean, he hit 172 when he came up to the majors last year. Says, well, if he gets off to a slow start, we don't want to see him lose his confidence. We'll have Crawford. So now they're in a box because Mason Wynn is a lot better this early than anybody expected, including, I believe, the Cardinals themselves. And they have Brandon Crawford, who they made unofficial promises to about playing time. He wouldn't have come here unless he had those things. And so now they're in one of those, gosh, I hate to say it, but they're in another pickle. They're in another problem spot of their own making. And they do that way too much, whether it's the outfielders, whether it's this, whether it's that. The Cardinals always find a way to take a positive, not always. They too frequently, they have a positive. The best hitting rookie in the major leagues this year. That's a positive thing. Everyone's thrilled with Mason Wynn. And they somehow turn this into one of those things where what happened, where did all the smart people go in this organization? Where they turn something that isn't a problem into a potential problem. And that's what we're seeing at the shortstop situation. I mean, come on now. I mean, even if Wynn had started all 16 games, they still had 2 days off in there. I don't get it. I don't get it. Something doesn't smell right, and we know what that is. You notice Mason Wynn wasn't quoted yesterday, and even if he had been, he's a team guy. He would have not thrown his manager under the bus. I don't think Mason Wynn, if you hooked him up to a lie detector test, I don't think Mason Wynn would have. I think he would have failed if he said, "Yeah, I really did need a day." Yeah, I think he would have flunked that test anyway.
And I think that I don't know if it's a lack of faith in Mason Wynn. I just think it's well, we have Crawford, we got to play him.
Yeah,
we got to play him every once in a while. And I think that's the problem.
But it's easier to play him if Wynn's hitting 150. That's all.
Yeah, but he's not, and that's the thing. He's their best player so far, and so
you got to play him. You got to play
him. And I think that's the thing. I don't know what kind of. This is also, I remember Crawford came in after the news came out that Edman had gotten hurt. Right. And I think that it's funny how much the Edman injury has actually cascaded a lot of other issues.
Yeah.
And this brings into another question that is funny. I feel like the Cardinals almost have the opposite problem in the outfield right now. I was on KMOX with Matt Pauley on Wednesday night, and we were talking specifically about Nootbaar coming back and what that meant for Victor Scott. Now, Victor Scott had that very, very rough game against the Phillies. But otherwise, I think has been obviously been a positive in the outfield and a positive on the bases. He just can't get on base. He's literally 5 for 51 right now. I love watching Victor Scott. I love watching him play the outfield. I love watching him run the bases. 5 for 51 is unplayable. that 551 is rough. But you also, never minding that, before you even get into that situation, Jordan Walker is 8 for 50, and perhaps I would argue more alarming, because you can make a case that, okay, Victor Scott, maybe you put him in AAA for a little bit to give him the Mason Wynn treatment that he kind of got a little bit for a lot of last year. Jordan Walker's supposed to be hitting, and I found it telling that Walker did not get the start on Sunday, that it was Nootbaar and Donovan out in left field. Now, this is another issue of Carlson, the fact that Carlson is out, causing another problem, because what Paulie was saying in our discussion. He said, wondered what I thought about with Scott's struggles. Do you feel comfortable putting Nootbaar in center field? And my answer was no. My answer was no on that because I think Nootbaar is an adequate center fielder. But frankly, I would argue the one thing the Cardinals have going for them right now is their defense and the bullpen. The defense and the bullpen are working, and I think are allowing them to stay in games when they're not hitting. I think we've seen in the past the Cardinals take a little bit of Peter to pay Paul as the whole idea. Like the idea of, oh, well, I mean, remember, I once watched this team play Alan Craig in center field. I saw Alan Craig play center field in Wrigley Field because no one was hitting and they needed his bat in the lineup. We've seen those little mistakes here or there. My worry with Nootbaar, because Carlson's not ready to come back and Edmonds not ready to come back. Siani can't hit any better than Scott can. So I'm not, you have that issue there. So there's a temptation to put Nootbaar in center field, but the problem with putting Nootbaar in center field is Walker, who is getting better in right field, is still adequate in right, is average, maybe getting close to
he's average. A little better. Yeah,
he's certainly better, but he's not part of it. The idea of him getting better is like, well, if you've got Scott in center field, he's going to help him out. Yeah. He's going to help who's ever out there. And also, I kind of like having Nootbaar in left field so you can have Donovan DH and you can have Gorman. You get both their bats in the lineup. All these little pieces are kind of not quite fitting. And one of those major issues, frankly, is Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker is a mess right now. And he, we can discuss whether Goldschmidt and Arenado are going to get going. But like, if Goldschmidt and Arenado don't get going, they're doomed. like clearly, if Arenado and Goldschmidt have just fallen off a cliff, I don't think they have. But if they have just fallen off, and I think you saw a little bit of sign from Arenado lately, not necessarily from Goldschmidt so much, but if they've fallen off a cliff, this offense is not going to work. So I'm just going to have to put aside, I'm just going to have to hope that happens, but that's not a solvable problem. Either that's going to get fixed or it's not going to get fixed. Walker in right.
He's fine. He's actually a plus outfielder so far. I know it's early, but there's no concern whatsoever about his defense where I sit.
But there's certainly problems with the bat right now.
Oh, that's what he's there for.
And I think that's really the issue is if you, like the fact that he wasn't in the lineup, we're talking about Wynn earning the right to be in there. When you shift around all these outfield things, a lot of the outfield problems the Cardinals have had for the last few years is there's been someone that's shown them, all right, O'Neill's in a hot streak. He can have this spot now. Carlson's been looking better. We can trade away Bader and put Carlson in the outfield. Nootbaar's looking good. Nootbaar gets hurt. A lot of the Cardinals' issues, the Cardinals have mismanaged a lot of stuff in the outfield. But a lot of times, they've done these tryouts and they've let a guy earn a spot. And as soon as they give him that spot, and we've seen it consistently, we've seen it from O'Neill. I think that gets forgotten a lot that the reason they traded Bader was because they were ready to give center field to Carlson. He'd been hitting better and playing center field okay, and then it fell apart. And he came back this year, and then he got hurt again. And Nootbaar is the same thing. Nootbaar was like, all right, we've got Nootbaar set out there. He's got that spot, and then he got hurt. Walker is now the next in that. Okay, we're not moving Walker. We're not moving him. He's the guy that's right field, and he's got it. Regardless of the, like his even if he's a slightly above average outfielder, right fielder, if he's not hitting, it doesn't matter. And I feel like that, I love to criticize the Cardinals on the outfield. I think some of it is justified. But the fact remains, a lot of times they have chosen guys. Just something's gone wrong very quickly afterward. And I think we're seeing that with Walker right now.
He's hitting the ball on the ground way too much, 56% ground ball rate. That was a concern about him even when he was hitting for an average early last season as a rookie, and he eventually brought that ground ball rate down. It was still too high overall, but at least he was reducing it. And then now it's back to where it was. It's really bad. You can't take a guy that hits the ball that hard and yet so many of the things he does, he just beats it on the ground. I mean, hard ground balls don't scare any pitcher. A pitcher will take that every single time. So I don't know what's up with him. I have no idea. But this has got to change. He's one of the keys to this offense. I mean, there's a lot of people that you and I both respect, so-called national media, where, you know, he was sort of a popular, semi-popular choices like breakout player of the year type thing, or on the list of breakout players. And needless to say that offensively, it's been a disaster. And now I actually appreciate his defense, but not as much as I would if he was also hitting. So I don't know what it is with him. I have no idea. Goldschmidt and Arenado have not pulled the weight that's suggested by their salaries. They just haven't. Little better here and there. I was glad to see Arenado hit a home run. By the way, the only 3-run homer the Cardinals have had so far this season. That tells you a lot. But it's like, you know, they have too many people they were really counting on. Arenado, Goldschmidt, Walker for sure. That just aren't getting it done. I mean, Gorman's up and down, but I'm okay. I can live with that from him.
Gorman's an up and down guy.
But when you have three central figures, you have your best young hitter and your two, you know, future Hall of Famers, and all three of them are basically a long way from where they should be offensively. You're going to feel it. You're really going to feel the hurt with your offense. And the Cardinals have 10 times this year, 16 games, they've scored 3 or fewer runs. That's the most by any team in the National League. There's no excuse for this offense to be as bad as it is, even with the injuries and even with Walker with the slow start. I'm not excusing his slow start. I'm just saying if Goldschmidt and Arenado in particular were, you know, sort of carrying the team, this problem would not be as ugly as it is, at least to this point in the season. So I don't know what the answers are. You know, Herrera's look good. Contreras looks good. They get plenty of offense from the catcher position. Donovan has been outstanding. I don't want to slight anybody that's been doing well. We've talked about Wynn. They have some guys that are doing well. I think Nootbaar is going to hurt. It's going to help, not hurt. But you have to. I think you have to live with Victor Scott in center field until somebody gets back, whether it's Edman first or it's Carlson first, because it's harder to accept the idea. I acknowledge it's harder to accept this idea of like, well, listen, we're scoring plenty of runs and what we need in center field is defense. That's first because we're going to score runs. Well, they're not scoring runs. And so then his offensive struggles become more of a story and more of a factor. And I get that. So that's another unfortunate aspect of this situation with their offense being so terrible. It draws attention to Scott where you wish that he could just go play defense and no one would care about it because they were scoring runs.
Right.
And now it makes you wonder. Listen, I talked to Ollie about this a lot. He's determined to play his best defense. He's absolutely determined.
And I don't disagree with him. I actually don't.
But and I don't disagree with him, but this is going to put more and more pressure on him. Maybe if they don't start hitting, maybe he'll decide. I don't know what he'll decide, but maybe Scott will be on the bench at least more than he has been. But I don't advocate benching him right now. Well, yeah, I really don't, because you still got to take care of your defense. Because that's a disaster last year.
That's the conversation I had with Paulie about.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would advocate that. You gotta.
I mean, it's hard. Scott's hard to watch hit right now on a team that's not hitting.
He had a good game Friday, real good game.
I agree, but like he's batting .098.
Yeah, I know, but you want to look for signs of progress. He had his best game in the season Friday night offensively.
Yeah, and I agree. Listen, I agree with you that Scott should not be taken out of center field. But like, this is the problem: is we are like when you think about changes. That the problem with the offense is all the guys that you can change cause other problems.
Yeah.
Like all the guys you would move out of there mess up other things, except for, frankly, Walker. Like, again, I know that like he's not, I'm fine. I'll grant that he's an average or slightly better than average right fielder. But like, if he's not hitting, then like, okay, Donovan needs to be in left. Nootbaar needs to be in right. Cause I think those guys are going to hit. I think those are guys, and I think this goes back to the push-pull that we've had with the Cardinals for several years right now. Okay, are they a team that move guys around and have pieces that fit here or hit here, and we go with a hot hand, or are they a team that just gives a guy to a spot and lets him have it? And I think one of the problems, and one of the reasons it's hard to talk about the offense struggles right now, is the guys that are struggling are the immovable ones. Like, basically, we've all decided what are the 3 spots that you can count on the Cardinals having every day in the lineup. First base is going to be Paul Goldschmidt. Third base is going to be Nolan Arenado. And right field is going to be Jordan Walker. everybody else generally moves around. Even the catchers move around. Like everybody.
Well, Wynn should be the shortstop, but too often he's not.
Exactly. And you got to get at bats for a guy that can't hit at all. And I think that's the thing is, I bet that speaks to exactly what I'm talking about. The idea of and again, so much of this, we get frustrated at Walker. We get frustrated at some of it, but like Goldschmidt and Arenado have to hit. Nothing works.
Nothing's going to work if they don't hit.
Exactly right.
That's the expectation. That was something that had to happen. It was mandatory that happened, and it still may happen to an extent. Like, I'm not certainly writing them off. It's way too soon for that, but I'm not convinced. I got to be convinced that they're still going to be a hell of a lot better than they are now. I mean, they're going to get better, but my concern is how much better, and that's the thing that keeps me a little restless about this. Ben Clemens, my friend from Fangraphs, who's brilliant. I had him on my show the other day, and I asked him about those two guys. He wasn't as concerned about Goldschmidt, but he actually used this phrase talking about Arenado. He said, "I'm terrified." He sees signs of an age-related decline there, and he thinks, I hope I'm wrong, but he basically was saying he thinks that Arenado's getting old early, and maybe that's true. That's what's such a concern about this, because Ben Clemens is one of the smartest baseball analysts I know. He's also a lifelong Cardinals fan, but he's also objective when it comes to the Cardinals, 100%. But he's a level-headed guy. He's not a hot take guy. He's the opposite of a hot take guy. So when he says he's, quote, terrified by what he sees in Arenado, I'm going to sit up and pay attention to that.
Yeah. And because it's funny because Goldschmidt is a guy that's always hit the ball hard. He's always had high, Clemens has written about this, that he's always hit the ball hard. But Arenado isn't. He's always been like a general, even during his All-Star MVP level type seasons, he's never been a massive exit velocity guy. He's been pull heavy. He's been, and whatever, like he is someone, I've read the same things that you have, that Ben's written. And Mike Petriello's written about this as well for us at MLB.com, about the idea that Arenado is the sort of player that ages fast. Because a lot of Arenado's career has always been about rhythm and vibes anyway, right? And the idea of being in the right headspace and that competitiveness and and like his habits and so on. And that's all wonderful. Those are all great things. Those are all important. But at the end of the day, you know what ages, what always works is hitting the ball super hard. and I think that's the concern. And I think but again, that's why it's hard to talk about the offense, because they're not taking Arenado out of the lineup. They're not taking Goldschmidt.
They can't if they have no choice anyway.
So we find ourselves going, okay, well, what can we do? What can we do?
Nothing.
Do we take Scott out? Do we move Nootbaar to center? Do we sit down? Walker appears to be the other guy that they won't take out of the lineup. They took him out Sunday, but that felt like just part of the Sunday rest day lineup. I assume Walker's going to be in the lineup 5-6 days a week, and I understand why.
Well, you got to stick with him.
Yeah, but that's the problem though, right? Is that it's very strange that the people that you feel you can move around are actually the ones that are producing. Like, that's kind of the weird part about it. You're like, oh, okay, well, maybe, because you can't change Arenado, you can't change Goldschmidt, and you can't change Walker. I agree with all three of those things. But if those three aren't hitting, you're like, well, what can we do? I guess we can maybe, I don't know, figure out, take out Scott, who's playing an excellent defensive center field, and that causes other problems. Or do you move Nootbaar to left, move Donovan to second, take out Gordon? Like, it's just all these problems that it's unfixable. So I find myself, as frustrated as I was by that Sunday lineup.
There's no easy solution. So people trying to find one, or they might as well, I don't know. They might as well go on a Easter egg hunt or something.
And it leads to this kind of like frustrated, this frustrated, almost impotent frustration, where it's just like, because there's nothing you can do. Like, there's nothing you can do.
Listen, if their offense is mediocre, even mediocre, not awful, even if it's mediocre, they're in big trouble.
They are. I mean, that's all there is to it. And I agree. And I think that again, this goes back to my earlier bias. I still feel like the offense should be good. I still feel like the offense should be good, because you just look at look at the pleasant surprises. Look at Herrera Donovan. We knew he was going to be good. He looks like like the dude. Like Donovan looks like a guy that should be atop of this lineup for many years to come. He is a guy that you just trust at the plate. He's doing great. Contreras looks awesome. Nootbaar has been hurt, but he's only played 3 games, but he's hit the ball. He's got power. The stuff that got us excited about Nootbaar is there. Gorman, I feel like, is a guy that's going to come on. You look, and Wynn has been so much better than we would have thought. There's actually a lot of positive signs that we've seen on the offense so far that we wouldn't have necessarily expected, which speaks more to the point. It just doesn't matter if Arenado and Goldschmidt aren't hit, and Walker too, because if you've got the 3 guys, and I think you and I agree that the 3 guys that they are least likely to take out of the lineup are Arenado, Goldschmidt, and Walker, and those are the 3 ones having the biggest struggle right now.
No, they can't. They can't take him out of the lineup. But so it's like, and you're not advocating that, and I don't think any reasonably sane person is. But it's like you gotta ride it out with those guys.
I think you could make a slight argument for Walker. I think you can make a slight argument for Walker, even accounting for the defense getting a little better, because Nootbaar's defense is better in right than his is. Yes, I think that generally the numbers show that. I think they in the past they've been obviously.
Well, it's not the past. He's much better this year.
Yeah, I understand that, but
he's made 2 great plays out there. And
but Nootbaar has not done anything to make you think he get.
Nootbaar's been a little bit above average, but that's where Walker is right now.
But so Nootbaar's hitting. And I think that's
Nootbaar's played in 3 games. I mean, it's like, and Nootbaar's up and down, and he's had a lot of disappointing stretches. I mean,
but if Walker hits like this for 2 more weeks, what are you gonna do?
Listen, Walker. They've played 16 games. He has started 13, so he's been out of the lineup 3 times. And what did that do? You know what they were? They didn't have a good record when he didn't start. Because
here's my question: if Walker hits like this,
you don't give up on Jordan Walker. Like another week or 2. That's total panic button.
I'm not saying I'm trading him, but he's not.
That's panic button stuff. You can't do that. You got to ride it out. He's got tremendous upside. We know that. You got to stick. You got to stick with him. You don't bail out on him right now. I mean, come on now.
I'm just saying that last year, the problems that Walker are having are actually familiar. It's an issue that we've seen him have before. It's funny, speaking of Ben Clemens, he wrote a really good piece last year about when Walker went down. The changes were not actually dramatic. He was hitting the ball in the air a little bit more. But listen, Walker hits the ball so hard that I understand the idea. I get it. But I'm just saying it's hard. If of the 3 guys that they cannot take out of the lineup, the only one you can at least squint and imagining doing that for is Walker, because you at least have other options. You have no other options.
Well,
you're not going to put Luke and Baker in front of Goldschmidt or something.
They've done it. They've done it 3 times this year already, and they also pinch hit for him the other night. So I don't know what Listen, I don't really care that he still hit ground balls when he was down in Memphis. When he came up, all I know is the ground ball rate last year gradually went down and down and down and down and down.
Yeah,
there was a stark difference, but now it's back up to where it was in the bad part of 2023. So I don't know what the answer is. Boy, it's a good thing they've fired Jeff Albert though. See, their offense would. Oh, that's right. Their offense was good when he was here. Yeah, that's right. So anyway,
well, listen. For the record, it was good last year. It was until they basically punted on the season. The offense was good last year.
It was fine. Yeah, it was good. It was above average, but I don't want to get carried away.
Yeah, and it's certainly better than it is now. And so I think it is reasonable, even in the disaster year that was last year, to expect the offense to be at least as good as it was for the first 2/3 of the season, because theoretically you've got more guys there. And I still think it can be. It's just, I have a hard time, as much as I was frustrated with Sunday lineup, I have a hard time getting upset with Marmol about the fact that Goldschmidt and Arenado and Walker are not.
No, that's right. And that's what I mean about piling on. I mean, I try to limit it now, because I think I can't stand when a manager is such an easy target. Everybody blames him for everything, including things that he has nothing to do with it. And there's some things, I think the way he's handled the pitching staff's been really good. I think his emphasis on defense has paid off. I think they're a better base running team, although they didn't have a good series in Arizona. But there's a couple things where you're just like, wow. I mean, the Mason Wynn thing, which I've already talked about at length, so I won't do that again. But he's also, because they all wanted leadership. I mean, Carpenter, he was 3 for 10 before he got hurt. But the point is, when your only moves to upgrade the bench or to bring in two 37, 38-year-old players who have seen better days, you don't have a lot of things that, where are you going to turn? Like with the players that you have in the major leagues when Carpenter's healthy, where are you going to turn? They've left themselves very short on options to sub in for a struggling offensive player. And so part of it is a problem of their own creation. So what are you going to do?
And particularly because you can look and see like a place where they've been kind of limber and nimble, and that's the bullpen. I actually feel like, other than Palante, who, I don't know, I feel like the clock's just about run out on that thing.
Yeah, tired of that. I agree.
But generally speaking, I actually like, I'm excited by this. And Middleton's not even back for a while, and I feel like he may end up being one of their best pitchers. But Kittredge looks great. Romero looks fantastic. I think Gallegos, you've seen some struggles here or there, but I still feel
he's more confident.
Yeah, I still think he's going to be okay. I think you've seen some positive Liberatore. Fernandez looked okay yesterday, and Halsey's looked good. And I feel like they've been nimble with the bullpen in a way that's been really impressive, and I think well managed. It's just they can't do that with the offense, because I think they saw the bullpen and the rotation as problems to be resolved, and they went out to resolve it. They did not, I would argue, quite understandably, see the offense that way, and they saw the offense as a place to get veteran leadership. And not as a place to because I think they understandably went into the year being like, well, I mean, obviously if Arenado, Goldschmidt, and Walker are bad, we're doomed, and so we can't do anything about that. And I think that's why everyone feels kind of helpless right now.
And I want to see the starting pitching get back on track. To me, they had a really lousy weekend. All three of those guys, Matz, Gibson, Michaelis, they were all like nails for the first 4 innings, and then in the 5th and 6th innings, I mean, just got blown up.
Yeah. How about those innings eaters?
I mean, it's just it was just ridiculous. So the rotation, needs to reestablish. They were going pretty good for a while. They really were. That's a fact. I mean, the 9 games leading into the Arizona series, their starters had like a 3.58 ERA. I think we would all be very thrilled with that if that was like the whole season. But that was a step back this past weekend. There's no doubt about it. That was just so strange how all three of them really had one bad inning. But I'm not going to rationalize it, because I heard some rationalization taking place in the Cardinals clubhouse. I was just like, well, he blanked him for 4 innings. He was great through 5, and then no, that's the whole point. You're going to pitch 5 or 6 innings. If one of them is a disaster, it still goes in the book as a bad start.
Someone who did finish their start in terrific fashion, we should talk about something positive, because again, they're not the White Sox, who may lose like 120 games this year. The White Sox are truly, truly horrible. Though congratulations to Tommy Pham back in the majors. The majors are always worse when Tommy Pham is not back. He's signed with the White Sox. Sonny Gray, his first start, which was very encouraging. And I would say, when you talked about the type of people the Cardinals needed to get in here, the way he handled that whole game and everything afterwards, like that was like basically Marmol said, you have a certain pitch count, you got like 1 batter left maybe, and he goes out and does double play the next pitch. That's a dude. Like that's a dude that when I look, I've seen Cardinals pitchers in the past. The thing that I feel like Cardinals pitchers have, even some of the good ones, have been missing. I think like even when Flaherty had that really good year, I think one of the things that excited us is that the way his approach at the time, we saw it did not turn out that way. But basically we all want people to look like Chris Carpenter, like with that toughness of Chris Carpenter. And Wainwright had that to an extent. Matt Morris had to an extent. But basically, what Sonny Gray did there, that was like an old Chris Carpenter sort of thing. And I found that very, very encouraging. They're going to get 2 starts out of him this week. And I think, I'm still expecting him to go deeper into games. He's still kind of working his way back. But it's funny how immediately I thought, oh, that's what it looks like. It's been such a long time since the Cardinals had a dude starter like that. I was like, that's what it looked like. That was definitely, of the only 2 wins they got this week, I found that the most encouraging.
Yeah, that was great. And I like the way Lance Lynn pitched the other day too. He's got a 2.63 ERA in 3 starts. I wish he'd go deeper into games, but the first start, he was washed out of after 4 innings because of rain delay. And then the other day he's pitching in the mud. And, it's one of those days where it's going to naturally just kind of take a lot out of you because he had to really fight through it. But, he didn't allow an earned run in 5 innings. I'll take with that. Unfortunately, Victor Scott's second dropped that fly ball that gave Philadelphia 2 runs. So I think Lynn's pitching. I like the way he's pitching. I like the way Gray is pitching. But I like the way Matz is pitching. I wish he would have handled emotionally or whatever, mentally, the fact that he made an error that opened the door to that big inning the other night. But I still like the way he's pitching. So they've got 3 guys right now where you look at and you say, okay, so far pretty good. But they need all that to continue, and then they need the other 2 guys, Gibson and Michaelis, to get better. Michaelis had 2 good starts in a row, but then he kind of reverted back. Gibson, and I'm a Gibson guy. I think he's going to, at the end of the year, we're going to look up and say he was a solid 5th starter, but his last 2 starts have not been good in terms of big innings. I mean, it's just that, one big inning is just like killed him in both of those starts.
And not to harp this thing one more time, but what makes those pitchers worse are messing up their defense.
Oh yeah,
to try to make the lineup go. And I think that and the good news is, because the bad news is, I do feel like I know there's I have it too. There is a inherent fan thing of we gotta do something. I have this. I feel the same way. And this is a weekly podcast and we're talking about the Cardinals and kind of our therapy session once a week. There's something you want to do, but the bad news is I would argue there's nothing really you can do with this roster right now. Now you've got decisions to make when Carlson comes back and Edman comes back and well, that we can discuss that when they get there. But right now, this is the team you have. That's the bad news. The good news is we are literally only 2 weeks into the season. And we talked before the season started about how they were going to, this first couple of weeks were particularly tough. I'm not happy with 7-9. I think but I also thought, if they get through this 500, then they can move forward. They were one loss away from hitting that notion. And now the schedule it eases up a little bit. I think this will be a really interesting week. They have these 3 games with Oakland. The Oakland is so terrible. I can't imagine what their record is. Oh no, they have the same record as the Cardinals. But certainly I think it lines up well for them to have Gray, Lynn, and Matz, the 3 starters I trust the most right now, against an Oakland team that has gotten some good pitching, but is not hitting the ball, and they're still Oakland. There's going to be, I'm going to assume every fan there is going to be a Cardinals fan at this point. So, and then you've got Milwaukee, who is red hot and hitting the ball so well.
They're good.
And they're looking good. It's very weird to see Milwaukee, a team that has basically not been able to hit, but has been able to pitch, suddenly knocking the ball around so much. But
Yelich is back.
This is the week though. There's 3 in Oakland. I don't want to hear, it's still early if you lose 2 out of 3 there. Or if you are this is a week you need to start piling wins. This is not a week we can go 3-3 and be like, all right, well, we're still figuring it out. This is the time. This is the time to start winning games. They need to be 4-2 or 5. They need to be at 500 at least by the time we talk next week. But then I think we can start worrying. So hold me to that, Bernie.
I will, maybe.
Because I do think they need to be at least back to 500. And I think that's a way, and it's early enough in the season. That's how things turn. You're telling me you get back to 500, we either go 4-2 in the next 6 games, either sweep Oakland or get 2 or 3 from both. You're feeling better after that. We might not feeling great after losing 2 or 3 at home to Milwaukee, but I feel like 4-2 or 5-1 are very much on the table this week. And frankly, what they need to be doing and take advantage of. We can't say, they had a tough schedule early if they don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, just win 2 series, 4-2 would be great.
Let's win the last game of the series. Well, at least once. Let's see that happen at least.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers.
Coffee's for closers. All right, Bernie. Well, we'll be back. We had a couple questions, but we ran a little late, so we'll get to those next week. But Bernie, we'll be back. I'm glad you're feeling better. No more carrots or
my gosh,
quote unquote carrots.
I apologize to our listeners. That was embarrassing. Yeah.
I know it's weed. It's okay, man. It's okay. It's a huge amount. I understand. I also smoke huge amounts of weed at 11 in the morning before the podcast every Monday. Who doesn't? Okay, that's not true. I know. I'm just kidding. All right, Bernie. I'm gonna go have some carrots right now, though. Have a great week, Bernie. We'll talk next Monday about the presumably 500 or better St. Louis Cardinals.
All right, Will. Thanks, man.
Yep.